The Lake Forest Podcast is supported by viewers, listeners, and businesses just like you. Make a memory of a lifetime with Shark Eye Outdoors out of Longboat Key, Florida. Experience their shark beach fishing, kayak tours, and fossil hunting. Go to sharkeyeoutdoors.com to schedule an outing now. Forest Bluff Real Estate Group serves Illinois, Wisconsin, Lake Forest, and Lake Bluff. John Josephitis, Laura Lee Van Fleet, and Michelle Parnell get a free market analysis now at forestbluffrealestate.com. For the best cannabis in the world, look no further than Iliad Epic Grow. They're a cannabis cultivation center owned by Lake Bluff's own Rich Ruzich. They focus on hard-to-find small batch products that will delight both the occasional user and ganjier. When visiting Michigan, ask for it by name. Epic Products, exceptional process. Iliad Epic Grow. For more information, email info@iliadgrow.com. Havey Communications has been helping first responders arrive safely since 1983. It's owned by Lake Forest-owned Mike Havey. Check them out at haveycommunications.com.
Paul Hammond, candidate for Lake Forest Mayor, April 4th, 2023. He's a lifetime resident of Lake Forest, licensed professional engineer in Illinois, registered energy professional in Chicago, Purdue Electrical Engineering graduate, BSEE 1979, commodity trader for over 40 years. He's running on the issues of stopping the plastic grass in Lake Forest parks, because every 10 years a plastic field needs to be replaced because of deterioration and wear. Email paul.hammond.pe@gmail.com.
We'd also like to say that we're thankful for our patron supporters. Reverend Luke Back from the Church of the Holy Spirit.
Matt A., Elizabeth C., Costa, Lance, Otto, RDM, John C., Dan Rogers, and Mike Adelman.
Shout out to the Lake Forest Breakfast Group, Rod Stop in Kenosha, Captain Mike's Kenosha, Greentown Tavern in Waukegan, and the Frolic Lounge in Waukegan.
Phillippe Melin, Jeff Brincat. Welcome to the Lake Forest Podcast.
Thanks, Pete.
Thank you.
Say hi to my lovely partner, Skoo Walker.
Lovely.
Always Skoo.
Hey, Skoo.
Good to see you again, Skoo.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Seem a little edgy, Skoo. You okay? What's the traffic like on your street there?
A lot of tree cutting.
Yeah, I saw that.
Paul Hammond's not going to like that.
Yeah. All right. Come on, man. That's our boy.
Your boy.
Ham and eggs. All right. So, gentlemen, let's kind of reacquaint everybody here. Phillippe, you and I, we had a history back in the day. I had the flag waving, Lake Forest caucus, door knocking. They can do no wrong. And then we had the school board election that was contested. What was it called? We Can Do Better? What was that thing called?
Let's Do Better.
Let's Do Better. That's right. That's right. And then Jeff, I think you were running for the board. Lori Fitzgerald, Joanna Marshall.
No, right? I've never been a candidate for Lake Forest office or.
You've never been?
I would say I'm an ardent observer and a willing volunteer.
What's ardent mean? I thought you were part of it.
Sincere,
Okay, sincere. All right.
Enthusiastic.
Okay, very good.
I went to public school, so I don't,
Hold on. I went to public school. Public school.
I went to public school in the South, though. So
Oh, the South. Oh
yeah.
I went to public school in the North.
Yeah, right.
Speaking of public school, Prue Beidler was a Chicago public school teacher. I wonder if she taught me back in the day. Prue, I know you're not watching, but can you let me know what school you taught at? Because I got a feeling you had an influence over me. All right. That being said, so Phillippe, you and I, we had issues. We had words, sort of like Prue and I. We had a relationship similar to Prue and I right now. We didn't really know each other, and we heard things. And how did we correct things?
Never talked to Prue, have you?
To Prue?
Yeah.
And yeah, I talked to her while she was berating Mary Groib at Gerhard's. Like I'm trying to put an order.
A relationship with her.
It's more like Susan Gardner.
Garrett.
Garrett, right. Susan Garrett. Because when I said I said the word donation, and then she just kind of slithered in there. I shouldn't say slithered. She levitated in between Prue. But I digress. The reason I'm bringing it up is Phillippe and I, we had, we were on, we were doing the Facebook warrior stuff, right? Finally, we sat down and, we had a cup of coffee. We talked about things, and here we are, right? Phillippe, you and I, boys.
That's friends.
Dude.
Boys
I
to men.
love seeing Pete walking his big dog around downtown. That's always a highlight of my day for sure. But yeah, exactly.
All right.
I've always found that you get on the campaign season and slights turn into bigger deals than they actually should be. And you get back and talk to people and you realize that there's a lot of consensus around, wanting better communities. And, so I think that was the spirit of our reconciliation, Pete.
That's right. So here we are, we're boys. And then I also reached out to Lori Fitzgerald and Joanna Marshall, and boy, Joanna Marshall, she can make 30 minutes disappear pretty quick. But we all got to get to know each other better. And the causes that I've seen that you want to do, Phillippe, is you're trying to get things better in the way that you can influence. Mm-hmm. Jeff, I met you in the basement, which I don't remember because I'm not good with names. I played ball for a while. I drink a lot of Diet Coke. They say that does things to you. You were a Marine, right?
Well, Pete, in all honesty, you never say somebody was a Marine.
Okay, all right.
You're always a Marine. No, I say that jokingly, but yeah, no, I served as a infantryman and a tank commander and was a company commander in the Marine Corps. Yeah.
All right, man. Well, first of all, thank you for your service. We got that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Because it wasn't for guys like you, idiots like me couldn't be doing, these podcasts, you know what I mean? So you guys, the first responders, thank you.
Thank you. I got to tell you, I'm old enough that I got a son who already pulled 2 tours in the Middle East in the last years. So yeah, that's the humbling thing, right?
Congrats all around.
Oh, well, thanks. No, yeah, he served as an infantryman, pulled 2 tours over there. So yeah.
Well, never forget, there's some stuff that went on there that people don't even know about, like, Beirut and all that crap back,
For sure.
People should look that stuff up, because the guys I played ball with, they went over there to get money to pay for college, and they come over and play football, and they would say, all the stuff that went down and all that stuff. So all the stuff that we're all bitching about, it's okay, guys. So Jeff, I thought you went to school board or something with parents do better. You're a passionate guy. You want things to get better out there. What's your background?
Well, listen, ever since I was 18, predictably, I've always tried to be involved, whether, in service to the military, volunteer services, and a host of philanthropies, principally around education and veteran services. But also, I've served in a state capacity, ran a state regulatory agency for about 5 years, and it never really gravitated towards, let's call them like local endeavors.
Yeah.
But as you get your roots deeper, and frankly, as your load tends to shift, lighten up in some ways, refocus in others, principally more than anything else, I have 6 kids, right? And so 3 boys and 3 girls. 4 of them are in the Lake Forest school system right now. It's, it was a very short leap to take a greater and greater interest as things like COVID came about and worrying about where education policy was going to go in a local matter. So that's become, I've always been involved, I'm involved in a couple educational endeavors around the world, but this is something that clearly hits very, very close to home. And so, again, seeing how things progress these last few years, I've taken a greater and greater interest. Phillippe and I, our friendship goes back to 2009. He and I have worked on a number of different causes. And so, it kind of became a natural progression that, we would circle up and along with the other, including Joanna Marshall and many others who I wouldn't mention her name, except that you mentioned Joanna's name already.
I threw underneath the bus. It's my fault.
No, not at all. No, but my point is, there's a huge undercurrent of parents who, predictably have taken a greater focus on what's going on in the schools for a host of reasons. And I was certainly one of those, and was happy to, Phillippe and I were able to kind of reconnect on a professional level in pursuing some of these causes.
Okay, let's get a couple of things out of the way here, guys, because it's going to come out either way, and I want to be above board with with everybody who's watching or listening. Okay, big surprise. I'm a conservative. Okay, Phillippe, you're a big Republican guy. Even though you say politics don't come into play, they come into play somewhere. Jeff, I don't know your deal, but I'm guessing that you're somewhere with me. Skoo doesn't say anything at all. Is that still true, Skoo?
I'm right dead in the middle.
Right.
I disagree with all you guys, and I agree with all you guys.
Very good.
Pete, I generally vote Republican, but I'm not like a tribal Republican, I generally try to focus on candidates or individual or causes that matter to me, So the Republican label is more of a, overlaps, but it's not
people
like
don't want to be called Republican anymore, because it's almost like being a liberal, because the far ends of the spectrums on both sides, with all these stupid Facebook posts, you get labeled, with something. So,
I mean, it's, and it's not even about how it perceived, I started a company here in town, and it was it had the mission of like turning Illinois red by 2030 or something like that. It's it was a Republican cause. And I left that company because I just was no longer aligned with the mission. I got to turn off my phone because it just bumped me off. But yeah,
is it Prue?
Yeah, Prue's calling me. She's complaining. No.
Keep going.
But I just want to say, So yeah, I mean, it's fair to call me a Republican if you want to, but that's not my driving mission.
Jeff, what do you want to call you, just so people can?
Well, no, I would say this. I've never voted for a party in my life. I've always voted for the person.
Yeah.
I'm a conservative, but I would challenge you, Pete or Skoo, to find somebody who, served 6 years in the Marine Corps, who owns a business and has got 6 kids, who's not conservative. At least the vast majority of issues be on the conservative side. But again, the idea that I'm a Republican versus a libertarian versus a Democrat, I don't think the party label applies to me, because I know I have great friends who served in the Illinois General Assembly or in Washington who are avowed Democrats, and they're great people, and they do a great job representing their constituents.
I think if you're going to label something on all of us, I mean, I would hope the label would be independent thinkers. I've pissed off as many people on this side as I have on that side. They equally hate the podcast. It's one of those things. Oh, I hate those guys, but did you hear what they? I hate watching those guys, but I learned. So as long as we're in there, I think we're doing okay, and we're trying to show both sides. And any side that has objective data, they seem to be more willing to come up. If it's subjective or feelings, they don't want to come up because they don't have anything to say. I'm not pointing fingers at anybody that's watching or listening out there, but that's just the point. The other thing I want to get out of the way is you guys are with Parents Care Lake Forest, Lake Bluff, right?
That's right.
Okay. And we're going to get into what that is. It's you two guys, and it's a third person, Frances. What's Frank's last name?
McCormick.
Okay. Is it Francis or Frank?
I call him Frank.
I call him Frank.
If he was here right now, I'd say, relax, Francis. But
I remember that.
Okay. All right. That's Stripes, Skoo. Okay. Anyway, Skoo's pretty entertained right now. Frank, he is an acquired taste like myself. He's got some posts out there that people have gotten fired up about. He's not on he's not with you guys now, but he is part of what you guys are about. people are going to label you guys based on the post that Frank has done in the past. And I want to get it out of the way so we can get on to the objective data, what you guys want to talk about. What's the relationship with you three?
Yeah, Frank. I mean, I think that the Parents Care started. I've known Jeff, like he said before. I've known him a long time. He wanted me to look at some data, and I've known him for a long time. Jeff's always the type of guy who's like always thinking about the forgotten person. I have a lot of context of that. But so when Jeff gives you a call and says, "Hey, I want you to do something," you know, I was more than happy to do it. When I started digging into the data on the school district and stuff, I saw something of serious concern, and I asked Jeff how I could help. Jeff and I are both doing we have other things going on professionally, and so we needed an executive director. And Francis has a interesting story. Let's put it that way. He was a teacher in Waukegan public school system. And he ran into some problems with there, and he grew a dissatisfaction with a lot of things going on in the education system. So, you know, Frank has his persona on social media, and we were aware of that. That persona is not the same persona that he brings to Parents Care. You know, he's hired for and part of this Parents Care mission for a specific reason. And has a specific job and a scope. And so, you know, he's a lot, you know, he has his own personal sort of voice or whatever, but when he's working with Parents Care and when he's working locally here in this school system, it's around a scope. We could talk about our three pillars
so it's basically these opinions are my own, not Parents Care. And
yeah.
whatnot,
Yeah.
Right?
What, you know, yeah. Frank's personal social media page doesn't speak for Parents Care. Now we understand, we're not naive that people are going to look at some of the things that he says and use it to attribute to Parents Care. But we'll get into this later, I'm sure, but at our mission is Parents Care is to give parents a voice and to give a voice. And that's not just people who agree with Jeff Brincat or people who agree with Phillippe Melin or Frank McCormick, but everybody. And so we think Frank should have a voice, and he's got a unique. He's the only teacher, you know, that we know who has a real insider's understanding of education. So he was, you know, he was somebody that we wanted to give him a voice and to, you know, within certain these parameters of Parents Care. Did I say that right, Jeff? I mean,
yeah.
And frankly, Frank's, you know, he's a very passionate guy, and he cares about students, and he cares about kids, and it's really kind of fun to work with somebody who's actually professionally dedicated themselves to education.
My point wasn't to make this about Frank. My point was that there's stuff out there. People can't hear your message because they're caught up in the mire of that other stuff. And I just want to let everybody know it's out there. Make your own judgments. Sure. Okay. So, all right, that's done. So now Parents Care, it started coming up. Didn't know it was you, Phillippe. Didn't know it was you, Jeff. Somebody sent me a link and said, "Hey, go check these guys out." And you know, the messages that I get, it's like, "Oh, these guys are, you know, right wing this," and check the, I'm like, whatever. I didn't even know who it was. Then I figured out, Phillippe, what the hell is he doing in that? And then Brincat, and then I still don't know Frank that well. You know, I'm still waiting for that phone call. Frank, you got my number. But you guys, when did this start to come above? Did it start with the grades from the school, or when did you guys get all passionate about this?
Phillippe, do you mind if I field that?
Yeah, please go ahead, Jeff.
As you can tell, Phillippe went to law school, and he flows.
I do know that.
So no, you know, I tell you what, you know, to back up a little bit, the nexus of all this is really the positions we take as fathers. You know, we all have children in the school system here. So while Parents Care is an entity that was formed to pursue these in a more of a macro sense in Lake Forest and Lake Bluff, you know, where we're really coming at as parents. You know, we're coming at as citizens of our community. You know, we're just three dads that have you know, found time to squeeze out additional effort towards what we would hope any engaged citizenry would do for their kids, right? So, but frankly, it kind of grew out of some of the concerns that were, you know, attention was called to through the COVID lockdowns in education, and even the post-lockdown masking policies and some of the things like that. And then looking at the track of the scores, but it isn't all about the scores, but it's about what we think the scores may become, what we think the direction the school districts may go in terms of performance and student outcomes. So again, Phillippe and I have been friends since 2009, professionally involved in one thing or another. And we started this dialogue and about how do we look at these things, how concerned should we be? How do we potentially address these things? Because, Frank, Phillippe and I all have children in the school system. We're people that go to, faculty meetings. We go to school board meetings. We try to be engaged. We try to deal with these issues as much as possible, closest to the problems and the challenges, difficulties that confront these districts. But so, in the course of looking at these things, at least in my experience, I met more and more parents all the time who really didn't have a feel on what was going on with the districts. And there was a great Bloomberg report that came out a couple of weeks ago, really dealing with that issue specifically about how detached parents' perceptions of how school districts are performing are from the actual empirical data. And we saw a need. I certainly don't speak for Phillippe or Frank, but as a group, we saw a need to say, hey, there's a bigger story out here about how our districts are performing that we need to take a more sincere interest at, and hopefully from a collaborative point of view, hopefully becoming an asset to the larger community in Lake Forest and Lake Bluff, and also along with other bodies like the administration, the faculty, the board. We think anything that we can do to engage parents more is a plus. We think what we can do to help get more of a story about how our districts are performing, good, bad, and different. And like Phillippe said, if people don't agree, we welcome that opinion. That's an underlying theme about what we do all the time. If you look at the pieces we just put out, we have different positions advocating on different issues consistently. But really, I would say, Pete, the last few months specifically have been all about trying to get as much information out to parents as much as possible. And we hope that itself has a positive effect. But we're already planning out things we're going to do at the end of this year and the data hubs we're building out, because we want to be an asset to parents. We want to do everything we can to have Lake Forest, Lake Bluff schools realize the potential that they should.
I'd say, and I would just add to that too, 10, 15 years ago, there was reporters at school board meetings, and there was oversight and people engaged, watching over, and you'd get the newspaper, and if something bad news or good news came up at the school, you could read about it in the newspaper. That's gone now. There's a huge vacuum in our community, in our societies now, where that hasn't been filled yet. That's what the podcast, you guys do a great job of bringing issues to light that maybe once were brought to the community in a different manner. Well, right now in our society, the only narrative that's coming out about the school districts prior to Parents Care was really the school district. They have a very robust communications department, and they put out, and what we were seeing was a disjunct between what the scores were saying, and at least from our perspective, what the scores and the results were saying and what they were putting out. We hear that they're exemplary, they're top 1%. That's true. We were also seeing that 4 out of 10 kids weren't proficient in math and English, which is unacceptable in our opinion. And so we thought it was important for the community to hear a different narrative, and not to have the only narrative being put out there being the government kind of approved PR firm narrative. And so that's what we're trying to do, is trying to fill a gap that maybe society has left in the modern era, So and you can't just yell at each other into your echo chambers on Facebook either. That's not good enough, So we want to do something more.
Well, just to make a point, it's like after we did the show last week with Dr. Montgomery came on, did his thing. Oh my! I don't know about you, Skoo, but I got lit up. Oh, I'm for the referendum. I'm this. Why was I so nice? Like, what are you supposed to ask? Like,
not by us, by the way, right?
No, but
I thought you did a good job. I saw the interview. I thought you guys did a good job.
People are watching. Lit up on when you say you got lit up.
Oh, because I didn't challenge Dr. Montgomery on this, and this, and it's getting into the minutia and the weeds of things. And the regular voters out there, number one, if they come out and vote, you're lucky, number one. Okay, so if they go out and they trek, maybe they get the early voting thing. Or can you early vote for this referendum? Yeah, yep. Right. Okay,
sure.
So that's going to happen when, in the next week or two? Something like that.
2 weeks before the election
day. Yeah.
I just challenge why people lit you up. Why is it of concern that we should have attacked Dr. Montgomery instead of letting him explain?
I'm trying to explain. People are getting into the weeds of certain issues that, unless you're really paying attention to this thing, for instance, they're missing out. The people that say, "Hey, why didn't you ask them about this?" They don't know that something happened in 2006 that got pushed, to now.
Isn't that the whole problem, though, in this town lately? Is that people aren't doing their due diligence and looking past 10 years or something and making.
That's the human condition, my friend.
All that without any history behind that.
People want to look for the negative narrative because they're trying to stay alive. That's just how we're wired. Okay, so it's the human condition. So kind of what I'm trying to do is, in a simple way, look, the school says they need money to fix up the place. Okay, that's one side. The other side is saying, well, you've had a budget for all this. Why isn't it fixed up? Okay. And then you have the amount of money that's being spent and the efficiency of, you have a certain amount of kids and you have administration. If it were a business, you'd have layoffs. Nobody likes to hear that. So it's kind of going back and forth. So I don't mind all the same people that flamed me last week. They can say, "Oh, you did a great job on this because you had Phillippe and Jeff on." Whatever. That's just part of doing the podcast. What I want is, in simple terms, what are the issues out there? What should people know about this 105 million? I'm assuming I know because I looked at your stuff and I looked at the articles that you have up there, and a lot of the stuff I'm impressed that there is objective data out there if you want to learn about this, and you give both sides. You give the side of for the money and against the money, and people have to choose. Now, what you're saying is, I'm guessing that you want to be efficient and you want to have the good grades. If you had to pick one, which would it be? Be under budget and bad grades, or be right? Pick your poison. I'll hang up and listen for my answer.
Jeff, you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. Let me first say, Skoo, I think you bring up a great point. That how much are people willing to look at objective data and things like that, and that's it's kind of our process, right? These things go to an election. The community voices its preference in a form of a vote, and parents' care is so much more than this referendum. People obviously have directed, there's something that happens with money and something happens with grades that accentuate people's emotions. And that's understandable, right? Because you're talking about children, but, that really speaks to the whole nexus of parents' care, is that, I reflect on my own time in running a state agency or as a company commander in the Marine Corps. The people who need are the most attention, the most focus, the most help, the most aid are the kind of the kids that are left behind. I mean, parents' care is really just about these kids. And I don't mean the kids left behind. I mean, all the kids. I mean, so, the referendum is certainly a big issue right now, but I want to stress that parents' care is a lot more than this referendum. And we've been very clear that we haven't taken a position on this referendum. And Pete, thanks for mentioning, but we've submitted all sides. And because we believe, Skoo, kind of the point I think you're making is the more we can help bring information to people, then we're really going to be an asset to the community. And that's what we want to be. We want to be an asset to everybody. I would argue that if you look at the objective metrics of per capita spending, not only on a statewide basis among all the school districts, but if you look at our traditionally considered peer group, if you look at the administrator to student ratio, and then you look at the grades, again, you look at from a statewide point of view, you look at the peer group, it boils down to what are your expectations of this district? But not only District 115, 65 up in Lake Bluff, 67 here in Lake Forest. And that's the question, right? What should we expect from these districts? What's the grade level we should expect? Well, that should come from leadership, right? what does success look like in Lake Forest? So the idea we can have, again, guns or butter, right? The classic economic argument. I would argue that that's probably not that applicable. There's the fact is the trend of the testing and the measurable student outcomes is just simply not good. It's not pointing fingers at anybody, and nobody wants to storm the castle with pitchforks and torches. But these outcomes are not good. It's not because of spending.
Did that happen with the pandemic? Like the scores were okay, and then they took a header?
Well, it's been a slide, Pete. It's been a slide that dates well before the pandemic. Now, certainly the pandemic was no help, but I would even argue that, respectfully argue to you or anybody else that it wasn't the pandemic that hurt these children. It was the policies that were in place in the pandemic and even post-pandemic that hurt these kids.
Are you talking about Lake Forest High School or District 67?
Well, I'm talking about all of the above, honestly. Okay. And again, it's a lot of it boils down to what's our expectations. As Phillippe alluded to, Lake Forest High School isn't a top 1%. That's true. But it's also true that 4 out of 10 kids are not in a grade level with math, science, or reading. So, we think. And
how are they graduating such a high percentage of kids?
Well, that's a great point. As you know, in Chicago public schools, you have 12% competency in 12th graders in math and English. High school graduation rates last year were 86%. They've never been higher. You're talking about, exactly a disconnect with respect to expectations. And of course, Lori Lightfoot, that was one of her main campaign points, is that they've never had higher graduation rates in Chicago public schools. These things don't necessarily run, in parallel tracks. But according to Illinois standardized tests, the ISB report card, right, which you can, even if you don't want to go to the ISB site, you can look it up in the Chicago Tribune archives. Those are simply what the scores are. They run well behind New Trier. They run well behind Stevenson. So my point is really, the question quickly becomes, what are our expectations for Lake Forest? What do we think we should do? What are the good numbers? But as bad as disconcerting as the scores are, I would offer to you there's something that should concern us more. And I would put it this way: there seems to be a level of contentment with these scores. So, if 4 out of 10 kids not on grade levels okay today, what's it going to be in a year or 2 or 5 years? And that's why we think so much attention needs to be called to these things. We don't feel that we need to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but certainly.
What's the purpose of scores, though? If colleges are moving away from standardized scoring, what's the purpose of the scoring then and the testing?
Well, I can try to answer that one, Jeff. Let me sure. Try to answer that, because I've been going to a lot of school board meetings, and Principal Lennart, who's the principal of Lake Forest High School, I think she did a nice presentation at the December school board meeting, and she said that the IAR, the SAT score, that's what the test that we're talking about here, she says we don't want to teach to the test, but she says that it is a good test, and that the skills that are measured in that test are very correlative to academic acumen, so that it is a good indication of how people are doing on the test, as an indication of whether or not they're actually understanding the grammar or the algebra or the core skills that we expect. So that it's not the position of Principal Lennart and the school district that the test is irrelevant, and it's not just a matter of getting a score to get into college. It's a test, an assessment of the ability of the students to understand the core concepts. And so that's why it's important. And really, that's more important, because it's not about just getting into college. If the whole system's going down, it's then, what's the point of getting to college if you don't know algebra? Like understanding algebra and the decision making process is really important, and it's gonna help you in college. It's also gonna help you in your entire life.
We're getting into a rabbit hole with this one, because it's a much bigger issue. We're talking about differentiation. How do you know a good student from not a good student? How do you know a good teacher from not a teacher that isn't good?
Well, I just don't see how if the high school's graduating 90% or plus, probably more than that, what are they all failing?
Do you think Chicago Public Schools is doing a great job?
Huh?
Do you think Chicago Public Schools is doing a great job because they're graduating a lot of kids?
To be honest, I don't give a crap. I'm more worried about Lake Forest.
Right, well, if you don't give a crap, that's fine. But like, I give a crap.
Well,
I do give a crap, and so I want to make sure that my kids who are in the school system are and their friends. I want to make sure that they're getting a proper education and are getting the skills that they need. So I care. I do give a crap. Yeah. So.
Well, I'm just saying, do you have kids in Chicago Public School or Lake Forest?
No, I would never send my kids to Chicago Public Schools. It's completely failing. And even though they might graduate high school, that's not what's important to me, Skoo.
Yeah, but you couldn't though, because you live here.
I could live in Chicago.
Public schools,
well, I think the point is,
if I could move to Chicago, I would never do that.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing.
I think the point is we don't want Lake Forest to turn into Chicago,
and it never will.
Careful on the never.
But I think there's a bigger point here is about what's the potential. What's the potential we should realize at Lake Forest High School? I mean, great leaders talk about people realizing their potential. And I think that's the bigger point here is if we evaluate ourselves against our traditional rivals, the New Triers and the Stevensons of the world, we're falling behind. Now, does that say we measure ourselves against them in all things? Absolutely not. But we can look to DPM, we can look to Deer Path and say, are they doing an adequate job preparing kids for the high school? And we can we can ask that question. And then Skoo, I think you have a great point. What I would say is the high school preparing these kids for life beyond high school, which in the vast majority of cases, Lake Forest is university, and they're getting to university. But, university that's not the end of the road. We're talking about, are they going to have successful university careers? They're going to have successful careers afterwards, whatever their chosen field is. And I would argue that not realizing the potential is the failing of the system. Is not because we can look at these objective measures and see the trend is running in the wrong direction, and we're losing ground compared to our traditional rivals.
Guys,
I would disagree with that in the sense that it's not the high school's responsibility to educate beyond high school. And it's the responsibility of the kids. If they're going to college, they pick up a whole new learning on moving on from college.
Then Skoo, I'm sorry, but you misunderstood what I said.
Okay.
About preparing them for a successful university career, giving them that foundation, and about realizing the potential that should be.
I'm just using a small sample. I have one of my children were well prepared at the high school and are absolutely killing it at college because of how they were prepared. And watching her peers at college now aren't even close to her.
Are you satisfied with 4 out of 10 not being prepared?
Look, we're not saying you're not.
Are you satisfied with 4 out of 10 students graduating Lake Forest High School not being prepared like your daughter is?
When you say not being prepared, academically or
they don't know algebra. Are you satisfied with that?
I'm sorry, I don't believe
I don't know algebra. So that's what
the data says.
Okay.
Do you have a metric that showed that they all are, or do you have a quantifiable metric?
I don't have metrics on anything. I have opinions on stuff, but I don't know what that metric 4 to 10. So 4 to 10 kids out of 1,400 kids don't know algebra, but they take algebra and all that. Is that what you're saying? And how
that's what Principal Lenart said in the December thing, is that this most recent class was highly deficient in algebra. Now she says it's probably because a lot of them were out of the classroom during when they were learning algebra. Where's the code red? We're seeing Principal Montgomery all over town. He's at every garden club, every realtors meeting. The guy's he's everywhere. He's campaigning hard for a school bond. Where was he last year when there was a bunch of kids who didn't know algebra in his classroom? Why was he ringing the bell? That's what we're saying, is that we would like to see the same sort of attention on algebra and academic and grammar and academic achievement as is being paid attention on this.
How do you know it's not being done? Are you in the school daily?
Guys, we're going to do the whole show on the grades. Look, people are going to vote. People are watching and listening. There's half of the people say, yeah, you get them. And the other half is like, what the this? So grades is one part of the thing. What else are people wanting to know? Because you're getting objective data from you guys. What else are they voting on? Look, is it 105 million, or is it going to be 50 million, or is it going to be an 8% increase if it's turned down this time? Like, what's going on? What's legit? What's not legit?
Well, the bond is like 105 or 106 million dollars borrowed. With interest, that's about 180,000 or so out of the taxpayers' coffers over the next 20 years, principal and interest. So the voters have a choice to support the bond and give the authority to the school board to borrow that money or to vote no. And then Principal Montgomery or Superintendent Montgomery has been pretty clear on what would happen if the voters vote no. If the voters vote no, he would bring it. Maybe Skoo, better, but I think he said he would bring it up in the presidential election, which is in 2 years for another shot at it. And then he says if they don't pass it that second time, then they would find other ways to pay for the basic core infrastructure needs that they have highlighted, like HVAC and roof and stuff like that. And that might come with at the consequence of reduced services. I think is kind of how he articulated on your show.
If it were a business, there'd be layoffs, but nobody wants to hear about that. I'm not saying to lay off any teachers or any administration. I just know from being laid off 3 or 4 times in my life that's what happens when the business isn't making money. And that's what happens when you have non-business people running a business. Let's get to the other points. There's 1,400 or so kids at Lake Forest High School, and Dr. Montgomery made the statement last week, and I don't know if any of you guys caught it, but Lake Forest High School is like a little liberal arts college. Do you have any issues with saying that, for him saying that? Because the point that I'm bringing up is if this were a business, let's just say it's a restaurant, let's keep it simple. The restaurants that went out of business during COVID were the ones that had 30 pages of menus, right? You're master, you have everything, but you're a master of none. Okay. So, or we could get into the long tail. If you only have 1,400 students and you don't have a lot of customers and you have this really wide menu, okay, how can you afford to pay for anything? Why? I'm not saying to shut down the high school. I'm not saying to have layoffs, but if you have a small base, how can you have this wide assortment of things? Or can you do vouchers or something to go to another high school that has this course on a Saturday? Or let's talk about the driver's ed example. Phillippe, what was the driver's ed example you were talking about?
Yeah, I don't know. Listen, I'm not the school board or the superintendent, so I know those are tough decisions. But I do know, I spent 5 minutes looking at the payrolls, and we're paying 2 individuals $130,000 base salary, plus pensions and everything for a driver's ed program. You add that up, that's 260 plus 280. You're getting about $300,000 just in salaries for a program. You could voucher out basic pencil back of the thing math. And granted, I don't know what I don't know on this thing, but it seems to me that you could offer driver's ed by subcontracting it out and save a decent amount of money. So the idea that what Superintendent Montgomery says is that, like, hey, if we don't get this bond, the only way to pay for our HVAC and our roof and the basics of our building is to cut student services. I think comes across as a little bit of a cynical sort of a false dichotomy and a little bit of a cynical approach, kind of like basically give me the bond or your kid's gonna get it, and I think strong financial leadership and creative business sense. I think there's a lot of efficiencies that could be found. I suspect there's a lot of efficiencies that could be found that don't come at the cost of the students. And so I would like to push back just a little bit on kind of like his sort of the false dichotomy is like, if we don't pass this bond, then that we're gonna have to start cutting programs. Maybe he's right. I don't know. He would know.
I don't agree with that. That's not how it came off to me. I didn't see it that way.
Well, maybe you could pull it up from his video.
If the referendum gets turned down, they have to do this work, and they have to go back to this the drawing board to figure out how to do it.
Yeah,
I mean, This is a referendum that has to be done. It's, we're faced with a 100-year-old school that needs to get the bones updated.
What did they push off in 2006, guys? Does anybody know?
What's that?
What did they push off? Dr. Montgomery brought it up the last time.
All the guts of the system, Pete. Because they added a new part of the building on and didn't take into account all the old parts of the building, the guts of it. And they, it was pushed down the road just because, there's shelf life still left on it. This was known from the get-go.
I get it, but people that just moved here have no idea. So
I know that's the problem. They just move here. They don't do the work to find out what happened in the past. They just want to bitch about the present.
And I'm trying to educate them. So the old building, it had life left in the stuff that was there. So they said, you know what, we're going to push it to the next. Why did it go to like now? Because that's when the end of life was on the equipment.
Pete, that's a great question. I mean, because any of us that own homes, any of us that own businesses, any of us that are involved in a church, temple, philanthropy that has a structure, we realize, there's key maintenance that has to be performed all the time. And even to step back a little bit, I would submit that, this is really the manifestation of a flawed approach to maintaining these structures and a priority of the costs that are needed to maintain these structures. And I would further argue that it's a Hobson's choice to say it again. It's like guns or butter. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. Well, clearly, the job of these elected officials we call the school board is to print. I don't think you can ever construe that one of their primary responsibilities is not adequate budgeting. So to come out, I mean, let's face it, this came out in November, basically like, hey, we need $106 million or else. And in my business, I kind of call that kamikaze management. And, this is something that needs to get revamped. And Phillippe and I have spent a lot of time on this to say that this, I think, reveals a shortcoming in the entire process of how we allocate our priorities from a financial point of view. It's hard for me to believe that this became the issue that it became in the very late part of last year to say, we need to do this. We need to get this on the ballot, and we need $106 million of, by their own admission, about half this money is really for maintenance.
Well, so, I think you guys all understand that what happened in 2006, none of those board members or administration are there today, and that changes and turns over. So, I mean, if you want to blame the last administration in 2006,
that's a marketing issue. How do we?
I understand that, Skoo. So, like looking back, you can't do much. But what they're not doing, and Matt says there's discussions, but they haven't committed to actually changing the policy. So it's the stated policy of the school board right now to not pay for the building, let it go to crap, and then bond out every 15 or 20 years. That's the stated policy. Me as a taxpayer says, okay, you want this money. I'm willing to consider it. I'm not a hard no. And I've told this to Jenny's, to Noble, to Schumacher, to Montgomery, and to Zeman, who's running the campaign. I said, if you want my vote for the bond, tell me that you're going to change it so that in 15 years, it's not going to be different people on the podcast saying, well, you can't blame this current board. You have to blame the past board. Well, I want the current board to get my vote, yes, well, for them to say, listen, we are going to start paying for our school. Johnny, you let your old bike kind of go to crap. You're asking me for a new bike. I'll buy you a new bike. Happy to buy a new bike, but you got to take care of this bike. And right now, the school board administration is saying, give me a new bike and I'm going to let it go to crap. And I'm going to expect you to buy me a new bike in 15 to 20 years. They're not putting enough money in. It's very predictable to know that you're going to need a new roof in 25, 30 years. They need, in my opinion, fiscal responsibility and budgeting would be to put a little bit aside so that when that roof comes due, you've got money and you don't have to borrow at a high interest rate, but you're actually taking advantage of compounding interest. So that's a policy differentiation.
The same thing that you're saying Dr. Montgomery said about, we need to do this or else. You're saying the kind of same thing. If you want my vote, change this. Yep. So what happens? Nothing happens. It gets voted down. Then what?
I just like to see him start budgeting for the building, and then you got my vote for sure. But I'm not going to buy. I'm not just going to be an endless piggy bank.
I mean, you can't start budgeting for the building now. It's got to get done.
Yeah. So change the policy, and you got my vote. But I'm not going to vote.
But how do you change if you change the policy? I'm trying to figure out what you're saying.
Moving forward, I'm talking about moving forward.
Change the policy, and you got my vote. Well, they can't change the policy by the vote.
I'm talking about moving forward. I'm talking about the new bike
from the process.
So you're going to vote yes then, as long as they look at
votes over. What are we going to do in the next 20 years?
Yeah, the next 20 years. So that because right now, 50 million of this bond is going to stuff that has nothing to do with education, HVAC and roof. It's just building maintenance. That's the stuff that should be in the operation budget. Imagine if you were like, hey, we're going to do $106 million. We're going to redo these classrooms, and we're going to do a new weight room for the athletic facilities. And we're thinking about all the cool stuff we could buy if they had properly, if past boards, we can't go back and fix it, but think of all the additional stuff we could buy with this particular 106 million bond if we had paid for the basic predictable maintenance. And so we're paying a huge premium of interest, and we're not getting our kids.
So what you're saying is our taxes should have been at least $250 more per year in the past, and they weren't. So we saved on that money. We should have paid out on it, right? Because if you're going to put another 50 million, I'm guessing it's
I think I would say that you need to be more fiscally responsible with how you're spending the money, and so that's the hard, that's the easy thing for me to say, but the hard thing to do, and I acknowledge. But I think that we're the fourth highest per student spend in the state of Illinois.
It's a lot of small numbers. I'll get to you, Phillippe. Jeff, what were you trying to say?
Well, I was just going to say, I think a lot of this controversy is of the district's own making in the following way. A lot has been made, if you look at the periodicals and the correspondence that's been sent out, about how fiscally responsible the district's been and how we're in the black after many years of not being in the black. And it's hard to say you haven't done $52 million worth of maintenance, but we're in the black. That's like saying my business made a profit except for the expenses and interest costs, or our home budget is in the black, but I haven't paid the mortgage for the last 16 years. And again, I'm not poking fun at anybody, but the fact is that's been a big, we only need to look at the references by our school board president, our CFO, to say that, hey, we're in the black. We should all be proud of this. We've restored to a positive operating position. And it's intellectually dishonest to say that when there's a $52 million maintenance need. So of course the community is saying, well, wait, it's only one or the other. Are we in the black? Or are we not in the black? Oh, we're in the black, except so yeah, I would say that this is largely of the district's own making.
Yeah, but does it make sense to sit and it just seems like everyone wants to bitch about everything and never have a solution on stuff. Phillippe, you're saying you got my vote if you change the processes. What do you want them to change?
I'll give you a specific example, Skoo, on the driver's ed. That was one. Well, but I'm not Jennifer Hermes. I don't
Every
have
student has a choice to go outside the school district to do it. And again, you want to hammer a driver's ed teacher because they're making, X amount of dollars if they've been there for 30 years, 25 years.
I'm not hammering anybody's
Well,
teacher.
you brought out a driver's ed teacher making an X amount of dollars.
It's just a fact. It's a fact.
I know.
We're paying $260 base salary for driver's ed teachers.
Yeah,
2 driver's ed teachers. That's a lot of money.
So if that person's been there for 25 years, he can't or she can't make incremental increases like someone does at a corporation. No one bitches about.
No, at a corporation you get laid off, Skoo.
I'm not talking about
you become too expensive.
I'm talking about making money. You're right, saying no, you shouldn't. A driver's ed teacher shouldn't be making X amount of money.
What's the point of the school? Is it to be an employment agency, or is it to provide high quality education at the lowest possible price? This is where you and I have a disagreement. It's okay. I respect your opinion. I respect your opinion, but I say if you're asking for me, taxpayers for a lot of money,
I'm a taxpayer.
A lot of money. $60,000 for the average family. In
Jeff, you and I should go out for a beer sometime. You know what I mean?
Listen, I love beer. So I'm in.
The only question, I'm just like, everyone bitches about stuff and no one has solutions on it.
Just gave you one.
I would argue to you respectfully.
What do you want? Maybe you're just not listening.
No. Here's the thing. I I would argue that that's what Parents Cares is all about, and why we haven't talked about our 3 pillars that are behind the organization. It's about providing these foundational arguments to the population, so people can actually see what's going on and not have a singular narrative about like, well, yeah, we're running profit, we're in the black again. Oh, but there's 50. Look again. We don't speak to anybody's, or at least I don't think we speak to anybody's motivations. But at the same time, there is a lot of information that needs to get out to the community so they can make these informed decisions. And frankly, this is how the system is supposed to work. These things come up. They come up for a vote. But I would argue, as somebody who's run a state agency for 5 years under a Republican and a Democratic governor, it's important to remember that this is not the school district's money. It's the public's money. It's the taxpayers' money. If you look at even under Illinois law, how appropriations are done and spending authorities are granted, the fact is it takes all that into account. It takes the seriousness with which people as public servants exercise those fiscal decisions. And that's why things like FOIA exist. That's why things like the Open Meetings Act exist, because that's the seriousness with even in Illinois that we say this is how people have to regard these requests of the community, which you're included. I mean, taxpayers, citizens, parents, and things like that. But this is how the system's supposed to work. People have the ability to go, wait a minute, I don't like the idea that a professional video company has been contracted to produce I don't know how many videos in support of this political campaign being backed by the district. They can say, hey, that's money taken out of the classroom. I don't like it. I don't like the idea that money's being taken out of the classroom when on one side we're saying we can't support these things, but we've produced how many professionally done videos to send out. And again, I'm not saying anybody should be on one side of the issue or the other. However, it's a legitimate question to question how these spends are supposed to be coming, because it's the public's money. It isn't private information. It isn't private money. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't hear your question.
No, I'm just curious, because when you guys first came out with Parents Care, I had no idea who you guys were a part of it. And I read some stuff. I'm like, oh, okay, that sounds good and makes sense. And then the guy that's the controversy comes out as the person running it, and it just kind of, for me, tune it out. I mean, and it seems like, in my opinion, all the good you guys are trying to do, it's just kind of, it's perceived differently. Because
I think we're focused on what is being said, not who. I think a lot of people jump to the who.
Yeah.
And that's why we're fact-based, and we're trying to focus on the data, and we're trying to.
But the data kind of loses it. I'm just speaking for myself, that your data, which I initially thought was good and interesting and all that, kind of tuned me out when I found out who's like the face of it.
Hey, look.
And that's kind of like, I'm not speaking for the community, but that's kind of what I've heard, from people I've talked to.
For sure, there's baggage that comes along with that, right? And we would be less than honest with you if we didn't acknowledge that. But, that's, the role of a disruptor can come in a lot of different ways. It can come in the form of policy. It can come in the form of the way you deliver the message.
Right.
It can become an actual form of the person. I mean, but let me say this as a matter of policy. I guess my title is chairman. I don't really know. I mean, in fact, I've always looked at the three of us as just part-time dads trying to pitch in and help the community. But as the oldest guy, I will tell you that we regard nobody as an adversary. I mean, we're here strictly for these kids. And if you said to me, it's easy. We want to try to help have the best student outcome for these kids across Lake Forest and Lake Bluff. And why, for the same reason you said about, I'm not putting words in your mouth about not caring about Chicago public schools. Hey, I think it's a tragedy, but you're right. My kids are in the 67 and they're in 115, and a whole bunch of my friends have kids up in 65. And those are the ones that we want to advocate and fight for. It's funny, like here we are, we're talking about bonds, we're talking about scores, we're talking about these things. We're really here for these kids. This is the whole reason any of this exists. We drive by that big building on 43, Waukegan Road. It's only there for these kids. But these things develop lives of their own. We talk about, reactions to FOIA policies or the mental health stuff that just went out recently. this is all ancillary to what we're supposed to be doing as citizens, parents for these
guys,
kids.
I hope understand that being, I don't like the ideas like being a disruptor, because I don't like disruptors. I think that's, but that's your choice and all that. But, a lot of this stuff, these teachers work their asses off and teach your kids, my kids, and bust their humps doing all that. And to get, see this negative feedback all the time,
there's no negative feedback about teachers.
It's how you interpret it.
No, my school board meeting, I'm sure you saw where I spoke at the school board meeting where I called for raises for teachers. I'm sure you saw that.
No, I didn't, because I didn't watch the school board meeting. But that's great that you did.
Well, listen, I encourage you to
deserve it.
But, a lot of them you'll see that I was vehement in calling for that, and through a certain efficiencies in the school board administration to do that. Listen, we view ourselves as an ally of what goes on in a classroom, and that's why we've positioned the things that I couldn't agree with you more. I absolutely could not agree with you more.
Are you guys local or are you national? That was a question that was asked of me. And are you trying to be profit or non-profit?
You need to come over and sit on our dirty plastic chairs we hauled out of our garage, and you'll see the answer to that.
Well, there's a difference between 501c3 and an LLC, right? Why'd you pick the LLC?
Philippe, you want to field that, or you want me to do it?
Yeah. It's kind of a pain in the ass to file for a nonprofit exemption, and you have to get accountants involved.
It's all a pain in the ass.
We don't have any revenue or anything, so
you guys are business. You guys are business people.
Well, we're not taking any donations. We don't take any donations. There's no revenue for that. We just needed to create an entity, so we created an entity.
The only reason you really file for a 501c3 in Illinois is that you want to make the donations to your cause tax deductible for the people who are donating. We're not taking any outside money. We've been very public in that. We've sent out a number of pieces of correspondence to thank people. Hey, we appreciate the offers, but
so you're never going to take money.
Well, here's the thing. You're saying never. I can tell you.
I know, but
no. Well, listen. You can go.
The person driving in the car right now. That's what he's yelling at the windshield.
Well, you can look at our Facebook page. You can look at our website, and you'll see we don't have a donate button. And we've publicly said we're not accepting outside money because this is three part-time dads who are trying.
If we took donations, we would become a 501c3 and do that. Trust me, not in this for the money. Putting a lot of time and effort.
You should be a podcaster then. Yeah. So, right. All right. So it's not national. You're not going to be national. It just is local, hyper local, or never say never, Jeff.
Listen, in the sense that we've had people reach out to us, help. Would you tell us what you're doing? And we related to people. We certainly had congenial conversations with people who are doing, similar things or trying to do similar things, because we think the skill set's fairly unique. Business backgrounds, political, strategic backgrounds, and actual teaching backgrounds coming together. But we came together as fathers. That's what we do. But Pete, you have an open invitation. You can come by anytime. Give us a little advance notice, because we all got straight jobs. We need to be there when stuff like that.
Poor suckers. So
yeah, right.
I mean, I think what it boils down to is that public bodies work better with an engaged citizenry. If there's no newspapers and there's nobody looking, then it's not bad people, but a public body, it doesn't have oversight, or a school board doesn't have oversight, doesn't work as well as a public body or a school board or any sort of entity that has oversight. And so if you look at like a business, you've got the management, that's like the superintendent and his team. Then you've got the board of directors, that's like Jenny Zinzer and the school board. And then you got shareholders, and we're all shareholders of these school districts in Lake Forest and Lake Bluff. And shareholders have different opinions. Skoo and I have different opinions on it, which is great. We should be talking about it.
It's America.
It shouldn't be bad that the citizenry is engaged and talking about their public bodies. These discussions, we have a disagreement, Skoo. I don't hold it against you. I think it's great that you're willing to host a freaking podcast and help give people in the community a voice. I think that's great. And so that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to give parents, whether they agree with us or not, a voice and information and engagement in their local school body. I told Matt Montgomery, I was like, don't see us as an adversary. See us as a partner, because your success is our success. We want him to succeed. We want his administration to succeed. We want the teachers to succeed. We're not here to take their jobs. We're not here for a political campaign. The bond referendum is not why we exist. We are here to try to help the school district get better and to have a more engaged citizenry. And that's our mission. And we thank you guys. I thank you for what you guys are doing on the podcast. I love the podcast. And I hope that you, maybe Skoo, and people listening can see us as not as somebody who's to be, an enemy, but somebody to be engaged. That's a better way to do it. I see
that. It's just how it's, presented out to the public. I mean, I'm being upfront and honest with you. I thought it was good stuff, and then I saw who was the face of it. That's.
I invite you to write if you like. If you write an essay or shoot a video, we'll publish your video on there, and you can make a case for the school bond. We're looking for people to make the case for the school bond, and we'll publish it and put it out to our list and give you a voice if you like.
My only case for the school bond is it needs to be done. And what's the other solution? There isn't.
Whatever you want.
It is what it is.
Is that the video?
Yeah.
Should we clip it?
It's not a video, Pete. I didn't authorize you to do it, but you probably would. No, I mean, it's stuff that has to be done, and it's,
I think it's a valid opinion.
Everyone has their warts and all that, but everyone has a lot of good stuff too. And I just, people need to focus on the overall good of stuff as opposed to, pinpointing all the bad.
No, we published positive when District 67 wanted to revamp their English and grammar curricula. We published and put out there and congratulated the director of curriculum and said, thank you very much for your leadership on this thing. So we're not just here for negative. That's if you look at what we put out, we try to call it straight as best we can anyways. Straight shoot.
It's a muddled thing because people don't really care till the election comes. And then when they start to care, that's when people start to market it. And what we're talking about is, going forward, there has to be a way where it's not that big of a surprise that, oh my God, all at once. There has to be a better process on it. So I get it. We're making sausage here. So for all the people who are pissed at me last week, you're throwing confetti at me this week. That's great. Guys, how do we do? And everybody get their say, out of the system?
Yeah.
We didn't we should have thrown something at the school board because they play a big role in this because I helped put these people in, and now I'm kind of seeing what they're doing. That's a whole nother ball game and another show. But Skoo, how you feel on things?
I have to say, every school board member that I've asked to have a sit down as I'm trying to better understand what's going on has said yes, and we've had productive conversations. Like I ran a campaign against Marcus Schaubacher. Marcus and I sat down, had a really nice conversation. I was really impressed by how he performed at the December school board meeting that I was at. And I wanted to get to know him better. And we had a great conversation. And we see eye to eye on some things and don't on other things. And John Noble's been very open and responsive to us. That's
a strong point. We should have talked about that at the beginning.
Yeah,
I was talking about Frances.
We're not hostile. we're not trying
to do their best.
We're not trying to run a campaign against the school board or anything like that. We want them to know that.
Boys, good debate. I don't know if it's a debate, but it's just like at a bar. This is exactly what happens at a bar. Just a lot more popcorn being spit out. Jeff, Phillippe, thank you so much. Parents Care, Lake Forest, Lake Bluff.
Thanks, guys.
The Lake Forest Podcast is supported by viewers, listeners, and businesses just like you. Make a memory of a lifetime with Shark Eye Outdoors out of Longboat Key, Florida. Experience their shark beach fishing, kayak tours, and fossil hunting. Go to sharkeyeoutdoors.com to schedule an outing now. Forest Bluff Real Estate Group serves Illinois, Wisconsin, Lake Forest, and Lake Bluff. John Josephitis, Laura Lee Van Fleet, and Michelle Parno get a free market analysis now at forestbluffrealestate.com. For the best cannabis in the world, look no further than Iliad Epic Grow. Their cannabis cultivation center owned by Lake Bluff's own Rich Ruzich. They focus on hard-to-find small batch products that will delight both the occasional user and ganjier. When visiting Michigan, ask for it by name. Epic Products, exceptional process. Iliad Epic Grow. For more information, email info@iliadgrow.com. Havey Communications has been helping first responders arrive safely since 1983. It's owned by Lake Forest owned Mike Havey. Check them out at haveycommunications.com.
Paul Hammond, candidate for Lake Forest Mayor, April 4th, 2023. He's a lifetime resident of Lake Forest, licensed professional engineer in Illinois, registered energy professional in Chicago, Purdue electrical engineering graduate, BSEE 1979, commodity trader for over 40 years. He's running on the issues of stopping the plastic grass in Lake Forest parks, because every 10 years a plastic field needs to be replaced because of deterioration and wear. Email paul.hammond.pe@gmail.com.
We'd also like to say that we're thankful for our patron supporters. Reverend Luke Beck from the Church of the Holy Spirit.
Matt A., Elizabeth C., Costa, Lance, Otto, RDM, John C., Dan Rogers, and Mike Adelman.
Shout out to the Lake Forest Breakfast Group, Rod Stop in Kenosha, Captain Mike's Kenosha, Greentown Tavern in Waukegan, and the Frolic Lounge in Waukegan.